Kendi,
Hi, Mary.
here we are with Angel's Autisms and the Energies, and we are at the historic Harmony Inn in Harmony, Pennsylvania. And I just want to say thank you, because not only are they autistic friendly, they really welcome our work in a big, huge way. And I'm so thankful to the Harmony Inn. And I love being here. I love the energy of this place.
No, yes, it's so nice of them to let us use this space. Too.
Yes, yes. We're gonna, I think when we left off last time, we wanted to cover trauma. Mm-hmm. And Kendi and her son, his name is Kenny, who was diagnosed autistic, 38, I don't know, in the 30s, late 30s, years ago. So Kenny's 39 years old, and he did experience some trauma, which you know that the primary caregiver and the autistic child, be it the mother or the father or both, when they experience a trauma, the other has the experience as well. In fact, from this point on, I would like, wait, I'm going to try to set the stage as best as I can.
Sure.
Kendi, and you would more welcome to watch our first couple videos. Her son Kenny was one of the first children diagnosed with autism back in the early 90s?
Yeah, I would say.
Okay. And through this journey of her acceptance and surrender, and through all of this, and Kenny growing and learning and doing and being, he experienced a trauma that set him back almost to the beginning and riddled with fear. So Kendi is here to share their story of this horrendous trauma and some of the steps that they had to take in order to get Kenny and yourself,
Yes,
herself, back into the game of being in real life. And Kendi made a comment to me when she was going through all of this. Life stopped. So you didn't think about the clothes you're wearing, what's going on in the world, because you're so overwhelmed with your autistic child being so overwhelmed.
Yes.
So Kendi, please tell us your story. What had happened with the trauma?
Yeah, well, I guess first I think it's important to, like Mary kind of said, but you know, Ken was 86, or it was 1986 when he got his vaccine, and by early 90s he was diagnosed, you know, with autism. And we went through that first, I don't know how many years of trying to change that and hoping, you know, to change him. And we really came to a point of acceptance of him and his limitations. And so he graduated, you know, at 21 and was actually living, I want to say, his best life, you know, because we had accepted his limitations. We were no longer trying to change him, and we kind of carved out a nice little life for him. Well, then COVID hit, and we actually locked down, him and I, probably 2 weeks before the rest of the world did, because of his disability, you know, he's very fragile. He had a seizure disorder, very severe seizure disorder, uncontrollable seizure disorder, and didn't do well with illnesses. So, you know, months into that, and again, it was just him and I, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And
yeah, that was a tough time.
It was a really tough time. I mean, and we went nowhere, and no one came in. My husband moved out because he had to go to work, so that way he wasn't exposing us. He would drop groceries off in the garage, and then after he left, we would go out and get them, you know, and bring them in. So And then, and I don't remember exactly the timing, but then they took sports off. And Kenny was big on sports. He used different sports to help regulate his nervous system. It was part of his daily routine. He liked to watch all sports, basketball, football, baseball. And that's a whole big deal to him. Like whoever's playing, he looks it up, and then he has the shirts for every team. He has a shirt, and so whoever he thinks is going to win, he'll wear those clothes. And so it was an activity that he did, on a regular basis. And if you know much about autism, they thrive on predictability, schedules, routine, all of this stuff. So it was a very challenging time. And I think all of that just was more than he could manage. Too many things that kept him regulated, that he used to regulate himself, were taken away from him, including going out, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, with a certain caregiver. Which led us to the morning of August 8th. He was very anxious. He was pacing. He was, later in the evening, we thought, he definitely was not himself. My other son was living in the basement because we had a little apartment down there, and he had come home from Hawaii right when COVID hit. And he said, what am I going to do? I didn't even get an apartment. I said, just stay down there. So anyway, we knew Ken was not himself. He was pacing. He actually went down into my son's apartment and walked around. He went to bed, and then he kept getting up. And he was very unsettled. He kept saying his phone was making noise, and that was unusual for him to say that. And we thought, well, maybe you know how you get notifications sometimes. So we looked at that and couldn't find anything. And I think we were up with him till, I want to say 2, 3, 4 o'clock. And then finally he seemed pretty settled. He was on his computer. He was playing Sims, which is something he did a lot. He liked to build things with Sims. And I sat down on my bed and I fell asleep. And I was listening to him through the wall because I could hear him through my wall. But I could tell all of his self-talk was pleasant. You could just tell that as a parent. And I fell asleep. And the next thing I know is 7 o'clock in the morning, and my phone rings, and I look at the caller ID because I had it laying on my chest. And it said Pennsylvania State Police, I think. And I almost didn't answer it because I thought, they're trying to get money again. They're waking me up. I only slept like 3 hours, but I did. I reluctantly answered it, and they said, is this Candy Connor? And I said, yes, it is. And they said, this is the Pennsylvania State Police. We have, are you sitting down? That's what they said to me. Are you sitting down? And I said, I thought to myself, yeah, actually I'm laying down, but I didn't say that. I said, yeah. They said, we have your son in custody here, and he is being charged with assaulting an officer. I forget what, there was 3 charges. I mean, big charges: assaulting an officer, resisting arrest, and I don't know what the third one was, like maybe just general assault or something. And of course, in my mind, my son Ken had never once, not once, left the house by himself without a caregiver. I mean, he was never a runner. He never even went to the mailbox.
Yeah.
So my mind's thinking, oh my gosh, well, my other 2 sons must be in trouble, right? And I said, I think I might have even said, is it, this one or that one? He said, no, it's Ken. And I'm like, Kenny?
Right.
And he's like, yes. And I'm like, oh my God, where is he? And he said he's been sent to the hospital. And I said, oh my God, he's autistic. I said, where is he at? I'll go there. And he said to me, he's a 34-year-old grown man. He doesn't need mommy to hold his hand. Yeah.
Oh.
And
did you express again he's autistic?
I was hysterical, and I'm like, you don't understand. He's intellectually disabled and he's autistic. And he said, I I remember him saying to me, and again, it was all such a shock. He
Yeah.
said, well, I'd like to know where he got a sword. And I'm like, a sword? Of course, I'm like, I'd been woken. I'd only slept 3 hours. I'm like, a sword? And he's like, yes, he was carrying a sword. And I'm like, oh my God, I have no idea. And I keep thinking, this is like some kind of nightmare. And your mind's reeling, and we don't even own a sword. I mean, a sword's a pretty substantial item. Like, if you have a sword in your home, you have a sword, right? It's not one of those things where, oh yeah, I forgot about that in the kitchen cupboard. It's just kind of like,
my sword.
oh yeah, darn, So anyway, I said again to him something about what hospital he was in, and he said that it was Butler Memorial Hospital, but that I wasn't allowed to see him. And he was going to be, once he's, they got him stabilized, they were going to take him and book him. He was going to be taken down to the police station and booked. So I hung up the phone. I immediately called an attorney that we've used for years for wills and different things. And I was hysterical. And of course he left. Was that a Sunday? I think that was a Sunday. So he wasn't closed, but I left a voicemail, and within minutes he called me back. And I told him, oh my God, they called me, my son. But he said, meet me at the hospital, I'll get you in. So my son and I jumped in the car and drove to Butler Hospital, and I still wasn't really aware of the significance of what had happened to him even at that point. But when we got there, there were 2 police officers outside the hospital, and they introduced themselves, and I shook their hands, and of course I'm in my pajamas with my hair sticking out because I was in bed, So anyway, I shook their hands, and the one guy had I think a skinned elbow or something, and they had a Band-Aid and gauze, and I said, oh my God, and I said, are you okay? And he said, yes, I hurt myself, and I said, oh, I'm so sorry. At this point I still was just trying to put the pieces together. And I expected to go in there and find my son had wandered away, which would be so unusual for him anyway. He'd never done that. Instead, when the attorney got me into the ER, by agreeing, I had to sign a paper that said I would agree to have Ken admitted to the psychiatric unit for 9 days. It was either 9 or 10.
Wow.
Which was really hard because, you can't explain that to Ken. And you're going to leave him there alone. But it was the only choice I had. Either that or he was going to be taken to jail and booked and put in jail until a trial.
And you had your attorney, so he did advise you.
He did advise me, yes. It was the only thing I could do. And so I went into the room where he was at in the ER, and I was not at all prepared for what I saw. He was hysterical. There's no other way to say it. He was absolutely hysterical. He had scabs on his knees and his arms that took months to fall off.
Wow.
Yeah, when he was in Western Psych in November, so that would have been September, October, and 3 months later, they actually called me and said, what are these cuts and stuff on his knees? And I said, that was from the police, So at any rate, and he was hooked up to an IV because his heart rate was through the ceiling. And they couldn't get it down, so they put him on some medication to try to get his heart rate down. But he was running just wildly around the room. Had no idea who it was. This is a child who was completely verbal and social, and he kept running over to the sink across the hall and turning the water on and throwing paper towels in, and then he'd run back in here, and he was just running all over the place.
Yeah.
And at one point, I remember, this was at the height of COVID too. You have to figure this was 2020. So we protected him from COVID. So at one point, this was hours later, I think we spent 3 days in the ER before they found him in bed. And at one point they brought him some crackers because he hadn't eaten. And I'm like, could you just maybe get me some saltines? Maybe I could get him to eat a few saltines. He's eating crackers like an animal and dropping them on the floor and picking them up and sticking them up in his mouth. And I'm like, he's going to get COVID after all of this. You know, he's going to get COVID.
Right.
But, so after, the 72 hours, they were able to take the IV off, for his heart rate. They got his heart rate down. But as things unfolded, he wouldn't even sleep. I mean, they gave me a cot beside him, and he would wake up like every, 10 minutes. And he'd just jump up and go flying around the room again and out the door. And, of course I'd follow him. And finally after, by 4 or 5 in the morning, I went out and said, is there any way you can post a guard at the door? Because I'm going to fall asleep and I'm not going to hear him, So they did, which was helpful. But, so what I then kind of started to piece together what had happened. Of course, he couldn't tell me. But I was told that, he had left the house dressed in a Halloween costume. And he had a plastic sword.
It was a plastic child's sword.
They failed to tell me that when they called. Big piece of information that was
big
missing.
Piece of plastic, and it was a child's sword.
It was a child's sword, yes. Yeah. And in fact, this whole thing went on the news. I mean, they flashed it across the TV screen. I had people calling me, Kenneth Connor arrested at the Dollar General carrying a sword.
Yeah. Yes.
And people who knew me and knew him are like, what is going on?
Right.
So the whole thing was so bizarre. So at any rate, and what had happened was that he had dressed in a Halloween costume. I think he just decided he had had enough of being stuck in the house. And the heck with this COVID, I'm going out there. I don't know what's out there. I don't know what this COVID thing is, but I'm going to get it. You know what I mean? Like, I'll be safe with this.
Wasn't it Batman?
It was a Star Wars character that he had worn at a Halloween. We had family Halloween parties, and he would dress up.
Okay.
For the parties. So he had put this costume on.
And he walked to the Dollar General, which God love him. Oh God, he's so sweet. But he's a little bit overweight. And for him to actually walk
a mile.
I would say to you, no way.
No way.
Can he walk a mile? No. But yet, however, with his costume on, he was able to walk that mile. So go ahead, Kendi, take it over.
Yeah, so we don't know how, but he did. And I mean, thank God he wasn't hit by a car on the way. We're very fortunate there and blessed. But as it turns out, the Dollar General hadn't opened yet, and the owner pulled in and saw him pacing in the parking lot. And knowing Ken, he would have been completely lost at that point. Because, I mean, if he got out of our little plan, he would have no idea where he was or how to get home. And my guess is he just went too far. But at any rate, they pulled in, and they could tell he had a disability of sorts, but they didn't know what to do. So he was in the parking lot. And so they called the police. And the police came, they pulled in, they told him to drop the sword, which he did. He complied and dropped the sword. According to the police report, they then sat in the grass and talked to him for like 10 minutes. So they had to have known at that point that he had a disability. I mean, it's very obvious that Ken has a disability. And then when they got up, and they also got his name at that point, which is how they called me a little too late. But so when they got up, they went to pick up his sword, and his plastic sword, I emphasize. And he wanted it back and tried to take it back from them. A fight ensued. They pinned him on the ground. According to the report, he fell down with his arms underneath him, and they took him down like that. And they kept telling him, put your arms behind your back, you're under arrest. Knowing my son, he would not understand that command, nor would he be able to physically execute that. body awareness just isn't there intellectually to do that. But every time he didn't comply, then they would tase him. So he was tased multiple times and shackled and handcuffed and put into a cage car. We didn't know all of this at the time.
What about the scabs? How did they appear?
I'm guessing when they took him down, when they tackled him to the ground, it was probably on the pavement. And I'm guessing he had marks all over his head. I mean, they had to do an MRI to make sure that he didn't have like brain damage or, you know, some kind of swelling in the brain.
It's interesting that they were talking to him in the grass, but when they decided to take him down, it was on the concrete.
The whole thing just really didn't add up. There was definitely, it seemed unnecessary brutality there.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. They knew he was special needs. Even the manager of the store knew he was special needs, correct?
That's what they said, that they knew that and didn't expect that
Okay.
he would be. And I guess I know several people that work at the Butler Hospital, and they knew people who were in the ER when he was brought in.
Mm-hmm.
And the minute the doors opened and they brought him in, I was told everybody just was like, "What is going on?" I mean, this person is obviously intellectually disabled, and he's bleeding. He's shackled and handcuffed. I mean, the whole incident was just unbelievable. That's all I can say.
I am so sorry that you and Kenny and your husband went through that.
Yeah, thank you, Mary.
I am so sorry.
It's
Yeah.
just it was a very shocking event. You know, you had a lot of cognitive dissonance going on because it was like I can't believe that the police did this to him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, these are the people we think will protect us and our children.
Right.
And we were just all so confused. But, you know, so they put him upstairs in the psych unit for 9 days, and not a whole lot of help. I mean, not that they did anything wrong. They were very good to us at Butler Hospital. I mean, everyone was so helpful and supportive of him and what he was going through. But
Wait, just before we move on into the recovery of trauma, please correct me if I'm wrong, but
sure.
didn't somebody higher up in the government contact you to somehow make the police and law enforcement more aware of children with autism and people with disabilities?
That was about a year, maybe a year and a half. It could even have been 2 years down the road, and that was me who contacted.
Okay. Oh
We
no.
got music.
Go ahead, Kendi.
That was me who contacted one of the representatives in the county, and I think I contacted the sheriff too, because I just decided that there needed to be more awareness of disabilities and how to respond to people with disabilities.
We're gonna have to talk louder because they got that music going.
Yeah.
In fact, we may have to do a part 2 because of this. You know that?
Yeah, I don't know where that came from, but
Yeah. So look, now that you know Kendi's story and Kenny's story of the trauma, we're gonna pick up on a part 2 because not only did Kenny experience all of that, Kendi also went through it. So with that,
well, and I think, you know, I had told Mary before, I don't want the whole focus to be on his trauma. I think what is helpful for everyone is, I mean, he became catatonic. He didn't sleep for 9 days. He was catatonic for months.
see, they need to hear this, and with that, I don't think they're hearing
but
this.
I'm tying up. But I think the whole point is I want to go into how we were able to recover him from that, which took a long time, but we used a lot of different modalities where I was told he would never probably recover from that. And that's what we kind of want to focus on, is the different modalities that I found helpful in
For recovery.
his healing. Yes.
Hey, so with that, I'm sorry about this background music. So we're going to go ahead and cut this short unexpectedly and do a part 2 about recovery with the trauma. Thank you guys.
Yeah, thanks.
God bless.